guys, welcome to another edition of the Corded Point podcast. We've been doing so many editions, and our motivation is such that we really don't remember the editions, but we keep going at it because Dave and Pranay believe in the whole philosophy of you keep trying and success will happen. I'm sure Dave seconds that. Uh, do you, Dave?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I dare not
So,
disagree with you. I dare not say anything.
no.
No,
No.
no,
So that's in
a
all good
lighter way.
humor. Yeah, in a lighter vein. So today we discuss a very interesting person whose birthday is today itself. In fact, for me, there are experts and there are fans. Experts are those people who can analyze, who can provide their expertise on a player, but fans are the people who speak with passion. And the person on the other screen, I've seen him as the biggest fan of the person we're going to be discussing today, who is Shivnarine Chanderpaul. So, what do you have to say on him? And it's his birthday today, Dave.
Yeah,
What do you think
16th of
about
August.
experts and fans? First, tell me that.
Well, I want to first congratulate the keyboard warriors for having arrived at a situation where they are being recognized. Because experts and fans, there are plenty, but keyboard warriors, there are not everybody has the talent to be a keyboard warrior. But to answer your question directly, I have a lot of things to say about Shivnarine Chanderpaul, who caught everyone's imagination in the 1990s and well into the 2000s. And, retiring not before 2015, 2014 seasons. And a lot of youngsters growing up in the IPL age, fueled by the T20 extravaganza, would remember this mythical West Indian figure who would bat with not with a lot of elan, but with a sense of purpose. Although a bit strange-looking creature wearing something dark underneath his eyes, none of which have come to know what that is. But truth be told, he was the silent guardian of the West Indies cricket. And Pranay, what I really want to say today is that in an era where everybody wants to be the diamond and nobody wants to undergo the process of becoming one, Shivnarine Chandrapal was not a diamond, he was titanium. He was
Wow.
pure steel. So when you talk about steely resolve, there are the likes of Rahul Dravid, Yunus Khan, Misbah Haq, and Inzamam Haq, and all these players who come to our mind. But from the West Indian perspective, somebody who didn't have the flair and elegance of Lara, but just solid resolve and a crazy batting technique, very crab-like technique, was Chandrapal. And I think his greatest success, which I want to point out to all the Caribbean fans, and irrespective of Caribbean fans, cricket fans, is that somebody whose technique initially was kind of questioned that is this even batting stance, ended up only 86 runs shy of Brian Lara's test tally of 11,953 test runs. So it's not
Yeah.
about your batting stance or your flair, it's about substance. So Chandrapal was a throwback to an era where substance mattered more than swag, is what I would say.
It's only befitting that you call this man having a nerve of steel because when you think about Man of Steel or Nerve of Steel, you think about Superman. And his initial also starts with S, and the person we are discussing today, his initial also
Well
starts with
said.
S,
Well
Shivnarayan.
said.
So, and the initial of steel also starts with S. Wow.
Yeah, it does.
Could it be more befitting? That's
And by
incredible.
that line, Prani Ragba has stolen your hearts.
No, man. I'm just honored to have every podcast with Dave Tyagi. Uh,
So
but
am I.
that
So am
apart,
I.
Dave, tell me what are your earliest memories of the man? And I believe on Wikipedia said that he was hypochondriac. Is that true?
I think the bowlers may have become hypochondriac when they were faced with bowling to Chandrapal. But not to my knowledge. It's strange, and let's not forget that Wikipedia allows you the freedom to edit things on your
Yeah,
own.
yeah.
I don't know
It's
who's
not
the
their
master
own
over their
content. Yeah,
content. Yeah,
they
so it's
amalgamate
a
content. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's a fan-run content community.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't, bet my life on it. But there are certain things which I want to point out about Chandrapal. But first, I'll answer your question that what's my first memory. So Pranay, let me start with a very simple example. You and I have often heard and countless number of times so that history is made by the victor, that the world remembers the person who came first, not second. By that example, everybody remembers Brian Charles Lara, who made 375 against England in 1994 at home at St. John's, Antigua. But not many people remember the batsman who was batting at the other end, giving him company so that Lara could, reach that landmark. It was Shivnarine Chanderpaul. And
Wow.
so I think Shivnarine Chanderpaul is a fitting testimony to shackle this age old norm that history is only made by the victor. Because who's the victor? Is he really? And it's more like a philosophical inquiry of sorts that we are making at Correct Point today, courtesy Chanderpaul. Is Victor the one who takes away grand wins, runs, plays the most number of matches, or is he someone who gave it everything to the team's cause? And if it so happens that your answer is the latter, then you're Shivnarine Chandrapal, the man who always played for the team's cause. Brian
I would
Lara's
also
last,
think that you're Rahul Dravid too.
yes, Rahul Dravid, very much also the beacon of
You know,
being a team
Dave,
man. You're right.
if I may just cut you here, when I was speaking to my dad, telling him that we're doing a edition on Shivnarine Chanderpaul, you know what were his first words? You paying
Tell
homage to
me.
the Rahul Dravid of the Caribbean.
He's right. That is right.
So
That is right.
that was quite incredible. Yeah. And you've rightly said
Yeah.
that victors are those people who've actually done their best for the team, irrespective of the
Hmm.
runs that they score. Because you
Yeah.
need that person
No, but
who's the knight in shining armor when your team needs you the most.
yeah.
The
And
vigilante.
the vigilante. Although
Yeah.
imagining Chandrapal wearing the bat suit would not be something which would please neither Christian Bale or the late Heath Ledger, but definitely that's the kind of analogy that both you and I as fans would recollect. I remember one particular instance from my childhood, and it was actually the day of a school trip to an amusement park, one of the crazy ones in Delhi, which I wasn't very keen on. Not a huge fan of social gatherings. I came back and we were playing. West Indies were playing rather none against none other than South Africa,
Oh.
and I think it was the second ODI of a seven-match series, and I knew for a fact that West Indies are going to lose. And the year was 1999. I was a 14-year-old, so you can do the maths. I'm not exactly 103 years old as yet. But to my utter surprise, the West
Not
Indies
even
put
half of
a
that, Dave.
yeah, not even half of that. Thank you. So the West Indies fought back and made 292 runs, which in those days you would imagine was a mammoth score in 50 over cricket. I'm talking about 1999. But 150 of those runs came from the bat of whom? Shivnarine Chandrapal. So those are some of my earliest memories. There was Donald, there was Cullis, there was, of course, Sean Pollock, one of your favorite cricketers. And in a match where I think Brian Lara scored 3 runs and took 21 deliveries to do so, it was a magnificent rescue operation launched by Shivnarine Chandrapal and Carl Hooper. And Hooper, again, one of the great compatriots of Chandrapal, Gyanis, but not a huge achiever at the end of the day. A fantastic player, somebody whose talent warranted greater returns. But I think that's the end of at the end of the day, Pranay, Chandrapal, and I was talking about technique. Don't you think, and it's my question to you, that it's not just about technique always or talent, it's just what you do to harness the best out of you. Isn't that
You know,
what we
Dave,
learn from?
I actually agree with you because for me, the two T's matter a lot in cricket. It's temperament and then technique. Because if you don't have that kind of temperament, what are you going to be doing in the game? Yeah?
Well said.
And
Well said.
honestly, for me, guys like Rahul Dravid, Shivnarine Chanderpaul, Jack Carlos, they've shown a lot of temperament. Guys like
Yeah,
Tendulkar have been more flamboyant, and
yeah,
guys like Kohli have just been getting upset recently. We'll not go there too much though.
yeah. Hi BCCI, we love you. We genuinely
Yeah,
do.
yeah, we love you. We
So
love you.
and in the this is for all the listeners who may not be really aware. So in the great Hindu mythology, there's a lot of importance attached to the three great gods, lords in India. So Brahma is known as the sustainer, Vishnu is known as the creator, and Shiv is known as the destroyer. But Shivnarine Chanderpaul was the sustainer as well as the destroyer. Because whilst Lara was destroying and not able to sustain it all that well, Chandrapal did often both, and did that minus gravitas, but with a lot of selflessness. Not that Brian Lara wasn't selfless. A lot of people have shamelessly accused him of being a selfish cricketer, but I don't think that is true. But the fact that Chandrapal, it's like it didn't even matter to Chandrapal at the end of the day that he never got the due that was there for him, or rather the lack of it. He just went upon doing his job. It's like he was the fan. It's like the ceiling fan. You just put the
Hmm.
button on, it does the job, it doesn't crib. If the electricity is not there, for example, if there is a interruption in the cricket match and the match can't go ahead, you can't do anything. But the moment you switch off the fan stops. Until unless you don't switch it off, the fan will continue to do its job. And that is the reason why we are the fans of Chandrapal. People like you
Yeah.
and me. Stupid an example that it may sound, but and the reason why I call Chandrapal a destroyer is that his average his averages rather against some of the top teams. Take South Africa, your favorite, India, our favorite, well, um, second favorite after our personal favorites, England, Pakistan, New Zealand, was staggering. He was the real destroyer of India. And I think, if I'm not wrong, his test average was north of 60 against India. That's no joke.
Wow.
In the first year, when Chandrapal arrived in Test cricket, and this is a fact nobody gives a damn about, and I'm upset about it. In the first year of his arrival in Test cricket, which was 1994, he was averaging 50 with the bat, 5-0.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous. In all, he made 280 Test appearances for West Indies. Out of that, on 49 occasions, this batsman remained not out. He ended up with 11,867 Test runs, if I'm not wrong, but 49 not outs. Now, Lara's undefeated innings in his entire Test span are six. Okay, Jacques Callis, the great Jacques Callis, comes close with 40. Chandrapal is on 49. So Viv Richards, I think, is 12 not outs in Test cricket. And Rahul Dravid himself, 32 not outs. Sangakkara, I think, 16 or 17 not outs in Test cricket. Chandrapal, 49 not outs. So technically, he took 231 innings to compile his 11,800 plus Test runs. And let's not forget, this is somebody who eventually ended up with 20,645 international runs
Wow.
on the whole. And that's no mean feat when you have 41 centuries against your name.
Dave, the reason that these guys have so many not outs is because they are completely not out on their temperament. And that's why they
So,
managed
yeah,
to get such not outs. In fact,
yeah,
you
yeah.
talking about his career runs in Test cricket. I saw a statistic which said that in his first 18 Test matches, the guy couldn't get 100. And in his
Yeah,
19th Test is when he got a 137 against none other than India, which
yeah.
I'm sure they had a
That's
very good attack also. So,
yeah.
and then to average something close to 51 in your Test career is simply wow.
Pranay, I'll tell you something remarkable about him. I think the year was 2012, if I remember it correctly. The man who today turns 47 was 38, doing the maths. And in that year,
I
his
must say you're
batting
very good
average,
with math, Dave.
हाँ बस स्कूल में कभी नंबर नहीं आए होते हैं उसको कुछ कर नहीं सकते. So in 2012, he averaged more than 90 in Test cricket. I mean,
Wow.
that was just ridiculous. In fact, his average, precise to be precise, was 98, north of 98 that year in Test cricket. It's a year where
Wow.
he almost ended up making 1,000 calendar years. And the reason why Chandrapaul is truly the headlining material of the unsung heroes is that 22 years is the duration of his Test career. Out of 22, in 11 of those years, Pranay, his average was comfortably over 50. If that's not the mark of a great batsman, then what is? If today the ICC have not included him in their elitist, clannish Hall of Fame, then I think it's not Chandrapal's loss, it is ICC's loss, who should wake up and smell the coffee. This is with hands folded, integrity and respect to the revered ICC. We don't want to offend anybody, in fact. But if you include Chandrapal, and I find it very funny, I see a lot of Facebook videos where the so-called big cricketers talk about their famous playing 11. Very few mention Chandrapal, but
Yeah.
Jack Callis and Rahul Dravid definitely include Chandrapal, because they would understand. It's not about the aesthetics; it's about the ability. It's not about the swag, as I said in the beginning. It's about substance. And Ryan Lara himself went out of the way and he said that, he made batting easy for me. So if you're making batting easy for a guy like Lara, you better be something special. And sorry, I'm talking too much, but it's difficult to curb my enthusiasm on Chandrapal, who really hasn't been given his due. There's never been a biography, let alone an official one, let alone an unofficial one. I don't know whether you and I can wrap brains together and come up with something, maybe a collection of essays someday. Maybe we'll touch base with Caribbean fans. But there is one thing I want to talk about Chandrapal, and it's the fact that at a time where Lara left the scene in 2006-7 season, where the West Indian decline was very evident, even as the likes of Gale were coming into their own, and very comprehensively so. Chandrapal kept up the fight. He at least delayed the inevitable. So there were test matches where the loss was just around the corner. That the third day would be the day when the team is going to lose. But this would be the guy who would bat overnight and ensure that the defeat would come not before day 4 at least. Let me at least try that. And this isn't a team which had striking bowlers like today when Roach and Gabriel combine forces. And of course now there is Jason Holder, one of the best ICC test bowlers. Of course one of the best all rounders currently going on in the game. There's a Zari Joseph. There's the young Jaden Seals. There was a time when Chandrapal had lost Ambrose and Walsh, isn't it? So who
Hmm.
was he really banking on? There was nobody. Corey Collymore, Pedro Collins, not bowlers who would make Alan Donald and Sean Pollock or Brett Lee or Shoaib Akhtar, suffer from nightmares, right? So this is a guy who was vastly undersupplied in resources, but whose results often outscored the expectations of his harshest critics also.
Yeah. Dave, speaking of awards, you'll be happy to know that in 2008, the great man was honored with the Sir Garfield Sobers Award. And in
Oh,
fact,
is it?
in fact, we had discussed this during the Sir Garfield Sobers podcast also,
Podcast
where
episode, yes.
I told you that there was Travis, Callis, Ponting, and then none other than Chanderpaul. So,
Yeah,
it's so ironical that the four players who've got this in the first 4 years are people who've shown temperament. I keep
hmm.
coming back to the word temperament because that is what defines these players and that is what is actually true to them. And it's only
Yep.
befitting that a person who showed temperament in the 50s, 60s, and 70s has been able to. His name is on the trophy that's being presented to these guys. So it's so nice.
It's remarkable. It's
Yeah.
remarkable, and it's very what is even shocking is that 2015, which was his last year when he was sacked from the team, because let's face fact, he wasn't told that we are trying to promote the youngsters. That was happening definitely, but he was shown the door, and everybody knew that if not for the man himself, it was a great opportunity for West Indies cricket to see somebody go past the majestic Brian Lara. So 2015, he averaged 18. and I've done a bit of study on this particular thing. You were saying my math is good. What happened to his average in the last 3 years before he was sacked? So in the last 3 years, his average was 71. Before that, 58. Before that, 99 in Test match cricket.
So you're saying 12,
I
13,
mean, that's,
14.
I mean, yeah. So I'm saying
14, 13,
2014,
12. You're going in the
yeah,
descending order. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. It's berserk that somebody who's well past 35 is averaging 71, 58, 99. With all due respect to Pujara, who I'm a huge fan of, a very Chandrapal, okay, similar in the mindset. He's struggling to put bat to ball, and I'm not very happy, not very pleased to see it as a fan. But this is a guy who, and it's interesting we talk about Pujara because the match is at Lords, and I want to tell you a tale about Chandrapal. So he was playing against England, of course, at Lords. Something he was able to do, which even Brian Lara and Sachin haven't done, but the likes of Sangakkara have, the likes of Chandrapal have, which is to find their names on the honors board of hitting a century. So Brian Lara is not a hit a century at the Lords cricket ground, but Shivnarine Chanderpaul did. Interestingly, this is the only left-handed cricketer from West Indies whose highest score he himself has been able to match, if not better,
Wow.
which is 203 not out. And unfortunately, one of those innings came against Dale Steyn-powered South African attack. I think this was this was in South Africa's tour of West Indies. It was, I think, 2003. And an ordinary year for Chandrapal standards when his average was 40 plus, not even 45, 46. So that's ordinary for him. Would be extraordinary for the like of Kyle Mayers or Shea Hope specifically speaking. But Pranay, my question to you is,
Dave, before you go
so
there, I'm just loving the way you're doing a subtle South African bashing, man. At the hands of Shivnarine Chanderpaul. That's fantastic.
I remember something about that innings. So 2003, Dale Steyn, let's not forget, he was the one of the fittest that he had been. Those were very, very early days for him. Early days, if not
His
very, very
action
early days.
also that time was very unique. He
Yeah,
remodeled his action. Yeah,
somebody with rampant pace. He's
yeah.
coming up around the wicket. They have three slips, two gullies. He bowls at full pace, and Chandrapal batting in his V stance, open stance, just guides it through. He's just caressing the ball between the third slip and the first gully, and is going for four. So all the frustration that Dale Steyn comes up with, this guy just just adjust himself, just shows the ball to the third man. He was wicked. He was a wicked player. He was a clever player. He knew what his strength areas were. And I think one of the things which really caught my attention, Pranay, to be honest, is that as often as it seemed that, this was a player who would focus on the offside because, his stance was pretty much going into that direction, especially with bowlers coming
A
around the
very
wicket.
front on stance. Yeah,
Yeah. Very front on stance, open stance.
yeah,
He would just
yeah,
flick it towards the fine
yeah,
leg
yeah,
boundary.
yeah.
And
That
I
was very
think,
majestic. That was superb. I mean, you couldn't
yeah.
expect him to play that shot, and still he did with such finesse. It was just like awesome.
Well, I mean, Brian Lara failed against India. This guy didn't. 7 of his 30 Test centuries, I think, if I'm not wrong, have come against us, Indians. 5 Test centuries each against South Africa, Australia, and England. Um, Fantastic achievement when you have 15 Test centuries in those days where cricket was still very much a balanced battle tussle between the batsmen and the bowlers, not very much a batsman favoring game. To have 15 of your 30 centuries against three supreme bowling attacks is no mean feat. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's my question to you was, do you find it as a spectator of West Indies cricket a bit absurd to note that none of these youngsters, or rather their administrators, go to Chandrapal to seek his advice? Like Shea Hope is in a precarious situation in his Test career. Okay, he's not even averaged 25 or 30 in the past 5 or 6 Test matches. So why aren't they taking advice from Chandrapal? Has Chandrapal said no? Has he said, I don't want to talk to these young guns? I very much doubt. Why don't they make these people the batting consultants? Why is everything so IPL or T20 franchise league directed that go there, specialist coaches are available there, or I don't know. I don't know. What do you have to say on that?
Dave, I feel there could be two things to it. One is how much is the West Indies board open to getting greats like Shivnarine Chanderpaul involved in West Indian cricket? And second is what kind of leeway do these youngsters have to go to Shivnarine Chanderpaul and ask him for advice? So I don't know whether Shivnarine Chanderpaul is open to giving his advice because I haven't really followed him post his retirement. And the other thing is like
Yeah.
a guy like Shea Hope or Kyle Myers or Bono, whoever else, the young blood of West Indian cricket. How confident or how approachable do they feel Shivnarine Chanderpaul is? But more
Actually, it's a very
importantly,
valid
the
point.
first point is what I would like to harp on more is why hasn't West Indian cricket approached Shivnarine Chanderpaul? Because if there's such kind of talent, the likes of Sarwan, the likes of Lara, the likes of Chanderpaul, who are batting geniuses in their own right. If you have such kind of talent who can nurture the talent right now, then what are they waiting
Yeah.
for? Actually, Dave, it's so interesting you bring this up because there's so much talent across countries in terms of ex-cricketers that these present day cricketers can harness, can imbibe from them, can extract from them, and still I don't see boards using that. It's not only a West Indian question, it's actually a universal question. Like South Africa used Jack Carlos for the England test matches, and then after that he went into thin air for whatever. They had transformation issues or they had whatever issues. But the fact is that there is such good talent. I'm sure New Zealand has talent like Stephen Fleming, who people can go to for advice. Sri Lanka has the
Like
likes
today for
of
sure,
Sangakkara, Jayawardene. My
Disbilwa,
question is
Jayasuriya.
that Jay Surya, my question is that why don't these boards approach these kind of players to better their teams or to better their batting talent? It's not
So
only a West
I'll give
Indian
you the
question.
hmm. So I'll give you the
What do you
classic
think?
example.
Yeah,
No, absolutely. I second you. There's no two ways about what you said, and you said a very fine point there, Pranay. So last year, let's rewind the clocks back to July, August 2020. West Indies helped world cricket resume cricket itself. They go to England. They start with the Jermaine Blackwood powered 95 run inning, which led to a 5 wicket win, I believe. Next match they lose, and then there's another match. The fourth day is rained out of the final test series where West Indies are in England. On the fifth day, all they had to do to have retained the trophy because they'd won it in the previous edition was to have just batted out time, session after session. I remember distinctly Shea Hope carving some magnificent cover drives. I think it was either against Mark Wood or it was against Jimmy Anderson. But then a temporary loss of form happens. He tries to pull a shorter one. He ends up holding out, and that's the time where your point comes in. That had a Chandrapal or Lara or Sarwan, for that matter, been there, would have just said that at times the victory in test is to draw a test. Even though
mm.
you
True,
and me
very
are
true,
watching
very
cricket,
true. Yeah, I
even
totally
though you
agree.
and me are watching cricket in an age where likes of Sehwag change the dynamics altogether by hitting a double century on the first day, by making 150 before lunch and stuff like that. But why couldn't an entire team assisted by rains on the fourth day last for the entirety of day 5, where it wasn't certain given the weather that 90 overs be pure ho payenge?
Yeah,
So these are areas where you remember Chandrapal. Interestingly, Chandrapal, we should also be careful of not restricting himself to being just a great and he is a great test achiever, because he's somebody who ended up hitting 1100s and over 8,000 ODI runs, and who was used effectively as an
at
opener
an
on
average of more than
many.
41, Dave.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's no mean feat.
and
In fact,
yeah,
he
and
also has a very envious record of chasing down 417 with none other than Ramnaresh Sarwan to win
418
a
with
test.
Sarvana the other day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
418
hitting a
was the target.
century.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's the time when even the great Brian Lara was out for 60. He came
Yeah,
down the track,
yeah,
missed the turning
yeah.
one, found his
So
wicket stumbled.
the
Yeah, it
reason I bring
was.
that up, Dave, is because there are two things to Test cricket. One is obviously going there and winning it, and second is the importance of drawing Test matches. This guy understood both. And when you're
Yeah.
talking about drawing Test matches, when you're saying that West Indies couldn't hold on to that fifth day, it took me back to a person we had an earlier podcast on, Francois Duplessis, who in 2013 held his own to strike that 100 and to save a game because he knew the importance of drawing that test could result in South Africa winning the series. I think the current generation doesn't see it like that. They don't see the bigger picture.
And also somewhere, you know, one credit I want to give India is where, okay, let's not make it a controversial issue by talking about our great legends of the 80s who won the World Cup. But in India, at least former players are still involved. You see, Dravid is
Yeah,
still involved
yeah.
in this transformation of youngsters into being tomorrow's promising players. I don't think the West Indies sees us like that. You know, I every time, and I have, you know, I love Brian Lara. So many players out there love Brian Lara. So many
The question
contemporaries of
is,
his
does
do.
Brian Lara love himself as much as you love him?
That's for another day. But it breaks my heart to see that Brian Lara, for whatever reasons, you know, we all have to make our living. We all have to, and we must, in the right sense of the word, you know, bring the best out of the time till the time we are relevant. But I see Brian Lara promoting a betting brand, and it's not against, of course, it's not against him as a person. He's promoting an online betting brand or some company. I don't even know the name, but with the zeal in which he's involved in that, he's involved in commentary of T20 leagues around the world. Why aren't we seeing pictures of him practicing with Shea Hope in the nets? This is something I want to ask Brian Lara. I know the episode is of Chanderpaul, and I've done exactly what Lara's great achievements did, which was to overshadow Chanderpaul. But you know, if Chanderpaul and Lara could be reached out to, if they are, if the proximity between them and these players increases, I think the future belongs to this team which has produced raw talent like any other. The
You
only
know,
two
they've,
countries which come to my mind of raw talent are Pakistan and South Africa.
it's interesting you bring this up because in a interview to an Indian channel, Wasim Akram had once said that he's willing to help out youngsters from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. The only question is someone should approach him.
Hmm.
I think that's precisely what might be the case with guys like Shivnarine Chanderpaul also. I don't know so much about Brian Lara, but the point is that you can't go telling people that you're willing to help. People need to understand that you've made that mark and people can come to you for that help.
Yeah.
And now there is where the facilitator should be the cricket boards. And you
Yeah.
can't make this an
And this is,
ego hassle in the sense
yeah.
that
And you know,
I
it's
have a
interesting
coach, I
because,
have a batting consultant, I am not going to go to XYZ. It can't work like that.
yeah. And it's very interesting, Pranay, that you bring that point up because in the last 3 years at least, the last 1095 days of West Indies cricket administration have been brilliant in the sense that they have given us talents like Joshua De Silva,
Yeah.
Rakeen Cornwall, who's an amazing turner of the ball. Let's face facts. Now we have Akil Hussain, who's rising up in the T20s.
A
Okay,
very fit one,
uh,
that too.
yes, yes, and you know we have Nicholas Puran. Okay,
Yeah.
so this wasn't happening when the Dave Cameron administration was there. So Mr. Ricky Skerritt, and if I pronounced it rightly, I'm not sure. It's a difficult name to pronounce with all due respect. So this new administration has
I
done
think
the
Roger
right thing
Harper
of
is the
blooding.
convener of selectors, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. I believe so.
Yeah.
Um, and so there is thinking involved, definitely. But I don't understand if Sir Curtly Ambrose can commentate, you know, and he can pass on his wisdom from behind the mic. And of course, the legendary Sir Ian Bishop is still there and going very, very strong. Where is it that this system failed people like Chandrapal? was a sort of cold shoulder given to icons of their time like Chanderpaul, so much so that they said, so a lot of times you don't express anger with words. Sometimes, the saying is no response
Yeah,
is also
yeah,
response.
yeah, yeah.
Did it happen that in 2015 the poor guy was so heart shattered that he said in his mind, it's cool, you don't need me, I don't need you, and it's fine, I'll be there if you need me, but I'm not going to be the proactive one to go out of my way, knock on the doors of Shea Hope or Roston Chase and say that, okay guys, listen, if you're struggling, then I'm there. I don't think, somewhere that cold shouldering
You know,
may
they've
have happened.
there
I could
could
be
be
wrong.
one thing which might have added to this. I don't know whether you know about this. In 2017, he went Kolpak, Shivnarine Chanderpaul to play for Lancashire. So possibly could that have also added to the animosity between the two respective parties, that's the West Indies Cricket Board and Shivnarine Chanderpaul, in terms of not using him at a in a capacity that could help West Indies cricket. Because let's face it, when a person goes Kolpak, you know it as much as I do that there is some sort of bitter taste between the two parties in hand. Like it's a known truth in South Africa. Possibly it could be true for West Indies also. I'm just saying it. I don't know. It could be a reason.
Absolutely. Even in limited overs cricket, Pranay, he was going bonkers with bat. 2008, his average was 64. 2009, I remember 59, 59. Then it dwindled down to 44, I believe 2010. But he was constantly scoring runs. So it's not that, he wasn't scoring runs in the white ball format also. He's won them so many games as an opener. Sometimes he was
Yeah.
promoted to number three. He was a very adaptable
His
player.
yeah, his flexibility to bat anywhere in the order is fantastic. Yeah, because Dave, it's a known fact that once you become a star in cricket, you become very rigid with your batting position. Let's face it, it's the truth. Like Kohli would
Yeah.
want to bat two down in Test cricket. He wants to bat one down in ODI cricket. He's a great player. I'm sure that the batting position does justice to where he bats. Sachin Tendulkar opened in limited overs. He batted two down. Dravid batted one down, but Dravid was again very adaptable. He took on the keeping duties. So to show
Yeah.
flexibility when you're still a star is also testament to the caliber of the person. And I've
Yeah.
seen that with Dravid, I've seen that with Chandrapur. It's so funny that whenever we think about anything which is a positive thing, we are reminded of these two guys.
Actually, actually,
It's
and
it's purely fantastic.
there are so many occasions, the parallels between Sachin overshadowing Dravid, and it's not that Sachin planned it like that. I mean, let's face facts.
No, it's not
Brian
planned.
Lara
It
did
just
not.
happens. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Lara did not say that tomorrow morning I'm setting an alarm of 6 a.m. I'm going to destroy South Africa in the quarterfinals of 1996 World Cup. But guess what? I'm going to hit a century only to overshadow Chandrapal. And how will I do
yeah,
it?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
Chandrapal was the guy who we forget in the very match when Lara made 111. Okay, it was Chandrapal who opened the innings in that 1996 Wills World Cup held in India. And how much did he score? He went easily beyond 50. I think he made 52 or 56, one of the three. So they lost Courtney Brown, but the first wicket stand was a decent one. But the platform Brian Lara had to go bonkers against South Africa was set by Shivnarine Chanderpaul. So that's the thing.
Right.
So it's the selflessness. People like Chanderpaul, they are a beautiful throwback to an era where what really mattered was to just contribute, contribute, contribute. Take no nonsense to your head that you are the great guy, you are a legend, you are a messiah or whatever. And something which would have worked in their favor is the fact that there was no social media in Lara and Chandrapal's age. But then, today, if the kind of book, garlands of respect they would have been given, they might have lost their mental balance, because social media can, it can wear you down and it can make and break you in a single tweet. That's the cruel world we live in. But for as long as the name of Chandrapal would be recited, it would be done so with a sense of purposefulness for a team which was batting often in times where it seemed it had no purpose to exist. In an era where the decline was evident, it was certain. But this guy just kept on batting. It was this mental toughness. and he didn't really have too many words to go about it. There is no fancy ICC showreel on Chandrapal. There is no mega interview done by the likes of Jared Kimber or George Dobell or Gideon Haig or even Sharda Ogra. And I'm not blaming any of these guys. I'm just saying there's nothing of that sort which has happened. There's nothing fancy which has happened for Chandrapal. And he kept on doing his job, unsullied by anything, unruffled by anything. Um Such was the
You know,
guy,
Dave,
you know.
there was nothing fancy on Chanderpaul, but I would think there's definitely a start, and two small men in India have made a start. Maybe the start helped people around the world to know how great the man was and the kind of credit he duly deserves. And I don't know whether
Yes.
people would pat us on our back, but I definitely think that we should pat ourselves on our back to do this podcast on someone who's not been spoken enough and who duly deserves to be spoken more. And I'm not being arrogant, guys. I'm just speaking the truth here.
No, no, I know you mean well,
So,
Pranay, and this is coming from your heart. Um,
so
है
Dev,
तो नहीं
we
बज
have
रहा?
about 5 minutes left. Actually, we have about 5 minutes left, so I need some good parting words on the great man, and then we'll end the podcast.
It's really a theory of mine, Pranay, that the reason why unsung heroes are called so is because they don't run after heroism. You know, they run after, for the lack of a better word, teamism, because you know they stand for the collective. And the reason why Chandrapal, Dravid, Laxman, Yunus Khan also has never gotten his due, let's face facts, is because it's just meant to be like that. You know, you'll always remember, taking a very small leaf from the mythological epic that Ramayana is, and with all due respect to, the worshippers of Lord Ram, the great Lord Ram, called Rama by some Indians for some example, like yoga is called yoga by some Indians for some reason. So everybody remembers Bhagwan
They
Ram,
love the aim.
but yeah, but little do people remember that Lakshman, Lakshman's sacrifice was as great as Ram's deeds, at least in my view.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, he would not have become the throne, the king of the throne, okay, the pretender to the throne. But he said that if my brother is being sentenced to 14 years of imprisonment, that's what you can call it in the jungle, I'm not going to sit back in the kingdom and enjoy the laurels. I'm not going to sit on the a throne of vanity. I'm going to follow him. So we remember the Amitabh Bachchans. We hold little for Shashi Kapoor's in Diwar, you know. But it's that brother who protects the mother who's remembered, who must be remembered, not the one who created an empire full of fortunes. So it's a very vague example I've given, but the point I'm trying to say is the one who's the keeper of the flame must be celebrated at least just as much as the one who had the gravitas or the world bowing to its knees because of flair and style and substance. This is a Brian Lara fan saluting champion Superman, as Pranay rightly pointed out, Shivnarine Chanderpaul. It was fantastic to have this opportunity to speak about someone whose every single run out of his collection of 20,600 plus runs was for the team's purpose, who never thought about himself, so much so that he never found it useful to write a book about himself. So that's all I have to say about Chandrapal, Pran. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak on it.
Thank you, Dave. So before we end the podcast, I'll just like to say something that heroes are not made through stardom or through fanfare. They're made through situations. And Chandar Paul was such a guy. Dravid is such a guy. Carlos is such a guy who've actually come out on top in situations, and that's why they're truly heroes. So we should always honor, respect, celebrate them. Wish you a very happy birthday, Chandar Paul, sir. This is Dave Tyagi and Pranay Rangra signing off from another episode of the Corded Point Show. Until next time, we bring you more meaningful content. Please do like, share, subscribe, and everything that you do for us holds us in, just makes us stronger and helps us soar. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pranay. Thank you, guys. See you soon.